This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, hello, ho, there's Jeff Cutter Dunn, and welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, November the 2nd, just 5 short years ago, the Chicago Cubs did it. They won the World Series. They did it. Well, technically, Game 7 was November 2nd, and the Cubs did win the World Series past midnight on November 3rd. But because November 2nd was Game 7, that's how I'm going to do it. This way. So, anyway, the 2016 World Series was an much anticipated one between Cleveland and Chicago. These two franchises had the two longest World Series droughts coming into the year. The Cubs hadn't won a World Series since 1908, and the Indians hadn't won since 1948. So, something had to give. For the Cubs, it was always about the curses of Billy Goat. 107 years without the title. Lots of things went against the Cubs. The Billy Goat in 1945, when a tavern owner brought his pet goat to watch one of the World Series games and was turned away, and he put a hex on them. The black cat that streaked across the Cubs dugout in 1969 at Shea Stadium that ruined the Cubs' chances of winning the NL East. 1984, where two events happened. Lee Smith giving up the game-winning home run to Steve Garvey in Game 4 of the LCS, and then Leon Durham's ball through his leg. The ball through Liam Durham's legs that sent San Diego to the World Series against the Tigers. Let's not forget Steve Bartman, 2003, and his massive gaffe. The Cubs were cursed. Cleveland kind of had a little bit of curse too, but, the Indians were a terrible team. Portrayed as such in the film series Major League, that the Indians had a lot of struggles in the 70s and 80s and early 90s. And then for some reason, once Cleveland got a new stadium and a new lease on life and some new killer players from the draft, they went on a tear. In 95 and 97, they went to the championship as heavy favorites. But the Indians lost to the Braves and the Marlins, respectively. So it was unbelievable. It was an underdog story. So anyway, the Cubs hadn't been to the World Series since 1945, and the Indians not since 97. The longest World Series droughts combined 176 years without a championship. So this was huge. So the Cubs, this was their 11th time in the World Series, winning in 1907 and 1908, but lost in 1906, 1910, 1918, 1929, 1932, 1935, 1938, and 1945. So they went to 7 straight World Series appearances without a title. The Cubs were the best team in all of baseball. 103 wins and 58 losses. Which is amazing. Of course, they won the Central. They won the most games of the season since 1910. Man, that's amazing. And the Cubs had their first division title in 8 years. The Cubs were number 1. They took care of the San Francisco Giants in the NLDS in a heart-stopping 4-game series, especially with the games those games in San Francisco, and then took care of the LA Dodgers in the NLCS. The Cleveland Indians made their 6th appearance. They won in 1920 and 1948, and lost their 3 most recent appearances, 54, 95, and 97. The Indians won the AL Central, being the 2 seed. They took out Boston quite handily before taking out, to my chagrin, the Toronto Blue Jays in the ALCS in 5 games. At least the Jays weren't swept. So it was a hard-pressed Game 7. 7-game series. The first game was in Cleveland. Kenny Lofton throughout the ceremony first pitch. It would be Corey Kluber versus John Lester. And what was huge for the Cubs was that Kyle Schwarber, who basically missed a lot of the 2016 season because of left leg ligament injuries, was added to the Cubs World Series roster and was their DH. Obviously, the DH role at the time. Schwarber did strike out twice, but he doubled. So anyway, Kluber looked good, striking out 8 of a possible 9 batters in the first 3 innings. Roberto Perez became the first 9-hole hitter to hit 2 home runs in a game, as the Indians won 6-0 and all that. Game 2 saw the Cubs come back to win 5-1. Carlos Baerga threw the ceremonial first pitch. They actually started the game at 7 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock because of heavy rain in the forecast. So it was Jake Arrieta versus Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer still had that injury from his drone. And you know, that incident dropping blood on the mound in the ALCS against the Jays. Anyway, the Cubs managed to win 5-1. So it was huge. Series tied 1-1, headed to Game 3, where it was a pitcher's duel. Billy Williams threw out the first pitch. Kyle Hendricks would face Josh Tomlin. And the only run was in the 7th inning off of a Coco Crisp single. The Cubs couldn't score a run off Tomlin, Andrew Miller, Brian Shaw, Cody Allen. And believe me, the Cleveland bullpen in 2016 was humongous. In Game 4, Greg Maddux with Fergie Jenkins threw out the ceremony first pitches. It was Kluber versus Lackey again. And Corey Kluber proved to be still that same old pitcher. Fantastic. The Cubs lost 7-2, and the Indians looked like they were going to give the Cubs another loss and another year on the curse of the Billy Goat. Then came Game 5. John Lester and Trevor Bauer. Ryan Sandberg threw the ceremonial first pitch for the Cubs. Anyway, it was a tight affair, but the 4th inning came out. Down 1-0. The Cubs scored 3 runs in the 4th. Chris Bryant hit a home run. Anthony Rizzo doubled. Ben Soberson singled. And Addison Russell hit an RBI single to make it 2-1. David Ross had a sac fly to make it 3-1. The Indians cut the lead to 3-2. But Adonis Chapman had to come in for the save. And the Cubs survived to fight another day. On to Game 6. When Arrieta versus Tomlin would be this pitching matchup. The last living member of Cleveland's 1948 title, Eddie Robinson, attended Game 6. Dennis Martinez threw out the ceremony first pitch. But the Cubs were merciless against Tomlin, scoring 7 runs in the first 3 innings on their way to a 9-3 win. Addison Russell hit the 19th Grand Slam in World Series history to make the Cubs up 7-0. And then came Game 7, which was amazing. It was tension. There were a lot of Game 7s that had Jim Thome threw out the first pitch. Kyle Hendricks versus Corey Kluber. Kluber was pitching on 3 days rest. He was 2-0 in the World Series. I mean, it was an obvious move. Good move by the Indians. But Dexter Fowler led off the game with a home run off Kluber, becoming the first player to get a leadoff home run in a Game 7. The Indians would tie the game in the 3rd inning on a Carlos Santana RBI single to tie the game. The Cubs would score 2 in the 4th, thanks to Addison Russell's sacked fly and Wilson Contreras' double. After Javi Baez made it 4-1 in the 5th inning with a home run, Kluber was knocked out of the game, and Andrew Miller came on in relief. And would give up an RBI single to Anthony Rizzo, make it 5-1. So the Cubs looked confident. Hendricks looked good. But after a 2-out walk to Santana, Joe Madden panicked and relieved Hendricks. It was critical. So John Lester came on to relieve him. But David Ross made a terrible mistake, making a throwing error. And then a wild pitch ricocheted off Ross's helmet. Well, Santana Kipnis scored to make it 5-3. However, Ross would come into his own in the 6th inning by hitting a home run to center field in his last official at bat to make it 6-3, becoming the oldest player to hit a home run in a Game 7 at 39 years old. Wow. Lester would retire the first 2 batters of the 8th inning and was pulled after a Jose Ramirez single. Madden decided to use Chapman, despite the fact that Chapman pitched in Game 6 when he should not have, and then he pitched a lot of Game 5. And I mean, this wasn't I guess it was a safe situation. Yeah, I mean, 2 outs in the 8th. Brandon Geyer hit an RBI double to make it 6-4, and then Rajai Davis came up. Not none of it's a home run power, but he shocked everyone by hitting a 2-run home run off Chapman, clearing the left field wall. And if you can hear the MLB International call of the game, Fast Gershen's call instead of Joe Buck's call, like he was going nuts, Fast Gershon was. It was 6-6. Can you believe it? The Cubs had a chance in the 9th inning. David Ross walked. Jason Hayward grounded to fielder's choice. So basically, Chris Coughlin, who was running for Ross, was out the base. Hayward would steal second and advance to third on a terrible throw that young Gomes made a catcher. Jose Baez attempted a bunt with 2 strikes, but he fouled it off, meaning strike 3, you're out. Dexter Fowler would ground out next to Lindor's great play at shortstop. And Chapman was asked by Madden to return to the mound for the bottom of the 9th. Thankfully, though, for the Cubs fans, that Chapman got the Indians 1-2-3. And then came the 10th. And then came a 17-minute rain delay, which is unusual in the World Series, for a World Series game to have a rain delay. So Jason Hayward called his teammates into the weight room and renewed their spirits. So it was up to Kyle Schwarber, my unsung hero from the 2016 Cubs. He hit a single off Brian Shaw, and then was replaced by pinch runner Albert Almora. Chris Bryant hit a fly ball to center, and Almora aggressively tagged up and went to second base. After Russell was intentionally walked, basically to set up a double play, Ben Zobrist stepped to the plate. But he hit an RBI double into the left field corner to make it 7-6, breaking the tie. Miguel Montero singled into left field to make it 8-6. So Carl Edwards Jr., not related to Carl Edwards, the NASCAR driver, came in to finish off the Indians in the 10th. After retiring the first 2 batters, Napoli and Jose Ramirez, it looked good. However, he walked Brandon Geyer, who took second base on defensive indifference, meaning that they didn't throw to get him out. Rajai Davis would hit an RBI single to make it 8-7. Madden then would decide to go with Mike Montgomery. But he got Michael Martinez on a ground ball thrown by Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant throws a Rizzo, game over, and the Cubs win the World Series and ended their 108-year World Series drought. Zobrist was the World Series MVP. But that didn't matter. The Cubs did it. They did it. Rizzo called the rain delay the most important thing to happen to the Cubs in the past 100 years. The Cubs then subsequently became the first team to come back from a 3-1 series deficit since the 1985 Royals after their comeback against the Cardinals. But unlike the 85 Royals, the Cubs didn't have any controversial calls go their way to get the comeback, whereas the Royals did. Dang sure. They were the first team to come back from 3-1 down on the road, win Game 7 on the road, 6-7 on the road since the 1979 Pirates. They were only the second team since those Pirates to win Game 7 as a visiting team, as the Giants did in 2014. And then Houston would do the same thing the year after. The whole team's got a massive drought in Game 7s because of all that. Joe Madden was 3-0 in postseason series against Terry Francona, winning the 2008 ALCS and 2013 wildcard game against Francona. The 2008 ALCS for the Rays. It was the 60th extra inning game in World Series history, Game 7 was, and the first extra inning Game 7 won by the road team. And the previous 4 times that a Game 7 went to extra innings in 1912, 1924, 1991, and 1997, the home team won all 4. The Indians have the longest championship drought, which is 73 years. Cleveland had a sports curse because of how bad their teams were. The Indians were doing great, but they couldn't win the big one. The Cavaliers, were sunk by their franchise inertness, especially LeBron James leaving Cleveland, but then came back to Cleveland and giving them the title in 2016 to my chagrin. The football team, just having all that bad luck, and hockey not really sticking around. So, anyway, yeah. The Cubs and Indians both scored 27 runs in this series. So, that was huge. Game 7 had 40 million viewers, the largest baseball audience since Game 7 of the 91 World Series. Of course, the Cubs fans congregated outside Wrigley Field. That's what you had to do. The fans were just amazing and all that. There was a noon rally on November 4th, and the Cubs said that there were 5 million people attending the World Series parade, obviously. And it was huge. The Cubs had a good run of success. The 2015 to 2020 Cubs had a great run of success in World Series history, in franchise history since the dead ball era. The 2017 Cubs would get to the NLCS, but the Dodgers would take them out in 5 games. The Cubs in 2018 had a terrible collapse. They ended up tied with Milwaukee and had to play a game against Milwaukee for the division, which they lost on home turf. And then they hosted Colorado in the NL wildcard game and lost in the 13th inning. They couldn't make it in 2019. They were in the COVID showed in 2020 playoffs, but lost to the Marlins. The 2016 championship core would slowly move on through free agency, trade, or retirement. Dexter Fowler signed with St. Louis during the offseason. Adonis Chapman went back to the Yankees. Jorge Soler and Travis Wood were traded for Wade Davis, trying to get the closer back. And David Ross retired. He became manager of the Cubs after Joe Madden left. Miguel Montero would be traded to Toronto, 2017. Jake Arrieta would sign a free agent deal after 2017 with the Phillies. John Lackey would retire. Mike Montgomery went to Kansas City in 2019. Addison Russell's career came to an abrupt end thanks to abuse allegations. Ben Zobrist would retire in 2019. Phil Epstein would step down from his role as president of operations for the Cubs in 2020. And then the Cubs lost Kyle Schwarber and John Lester to the Nationals. The Cubs were committed to a rebuild, as they traded away Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, and Craig Kimbrell. Oh yeah, and John Peterson too. Looked like a budding dynasty, but failed. The Indians 2016 was a big moment. the 2017 Indians would actually win 22 straight games, the most in modern history. But shockingly lost to the Yankees in the ALDS, despite the fact they were up 2-0. The Indians won the division 2018, but lost in the ALDS again to the Astros with a sweep. And the Indians basically are done for. And now they're going to be called the Cleveland Guardians. I wouldn't be mad if they wanted to do it like Guardians of the Galaxy, but they're doing this whole Guardians thing because of a statue. Man, oh man, Cleveland's getting picked on. I would have called the Cleveland Catfish or the Cleveland Lake Monsters or even the Cleveland Catalyst. But no, they have to go with Guardians. Kind of a wimpy name if you ask me. But regardless, that is what it is. So the 2016 World Series was fantastic. The Cubs finally did it. Broke the slump. And yeah, obviously I picked the Cubs to win the World Series. I mean, I'd be stupid not to. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.